After that performance from Yves Missi on opening night, I'm not sure we can say the Pels still need a center. In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you why Missi might be starting his next game and how Brandon Ingram played great. It's a Thursday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Thursday, day after the Pelicans beat the Chicago Bulls on opening night, 123-111. No Zion Williamson in this one. Apparently no real problem because of rookie center Yves Missi, probably the MVP of this game, stepping up in a way that we were not expecting whatsoever. He was fantastic. I'll tell you what he did to probably earn a starting spot going forward and maybe quell some of those doubts about the Pelicans and the center position. Then I want to look at Brandon Ingram. I thought he was great in this game, particularly in the third quarter, and I'll tell you what he did that really broke this game wide open for New Orleans. We'll touch on defensive rebounding, three-point shooting, Javonte Green off the bench, Jordan Hawkins, and some others as well in today's episode, a post-game episode of Locked On Pelicans. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Even when I'm on the road recording out of hotel rooms, I will be back in the normal studio for tomorrow's show, and I'm looking forward to breaking down the defense in tomorrow's episode. But we're going to look at everything we just talked about in today's show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This season, you can start with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, number one Pelicans podcast, coming to you like nobody else does. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get into it with Yves Missi because he was truly impressive in this game, being the second big man to come in. Basically, the starting lineup without Zion Williamson left maybe some concerns. You had DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Daniel Theis. We saw that a little bit in preseason. It was a mixed bag here, particularly at the center position with Daniel Theis, though he actually played well in this one. First sub off the bench was both Jordan Hawkins and Yves Missi. We're going to look at both of them here. Missi, though, was the star. 12 points, 7 rebounds, 3 blocks, and most impressively, in my opinion, we'll get to this in a second, just 2 fouls. Look, 12-7-3 isn't like that stat line that makes your eyes jump out of your head and you go, whoa, look at that. But if you saw how this guy played, with some maturity we didn't quite see in the preseason, the offense flowed better with him. That vertical spacing that he provided, just simply being a lob threat, was really great. In the first half, in the second quarter, when he was paired with DeJounte Murray, you just saw them spam a bunch of pick and rolls, and Missi being an above-the-rim threat was really great there. And you saw some early lob attempts from Missi that he was able to, get and throw down a little bit. That's the type of big man that the Pelicans did not have. We were hoping maybe Karlo Makovic could be playing because he could be a pick-and-roll big. If Missi can be a pick-and-roll big, that's a game changer for this Pelicans team, in my opinion. The center position was a big question mark, but you saw him just fill it. Be a threat offensively, and he was definitely that. When you have someone who off of the bench can go 5 of 8, got to the line, gave you 3 offensive rebounds too, and scored 12 points on pretty good efficiency there in his first NBA game, that's someone defenses will pay attention to. Frankly, this performance was a little bit Derek Lively II-esque for the New Orleans Pelicans, and Lively was really a game changer for the Dallas Mavericks last season. Defensively, that's where we knew he would play well, or at least not play well, but could play well. 3 blocks is great. In that first half, the Pelicans really struggled in terms of giving up points in the paint and things like that. Missi coming in really stabilized their defense in a way that Daniel Theis didn't. And on a night where in the first half, they were subpar on the defensive side of the ball, and they were in this one, well, you saw Missi come in and just give them what they needed, and particularly in the second half where he played even more minutes, he cleaned up a lot of miscues, and it made that Pelicans defense look really good. His rim protection can be really key to this team, and we'll look at that more in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. When he passed the eye test. When you watched him out there, you could see the athleticism. You could see all of the physical tools. But you also could see how quickly he learned and picked things up. There was no foul trouble for him in this game. In his first preseason game, he picked up 5 fouls in 2 minutes? That was my biggest question mark about him going into the NBA draft. When he was drafted, what did I say? Watch out for the foul trouble. If you're in foul trouble, you can't stay out there on the court. You're then hurting your team defensively. Well, he learned. We told you he was a quick learner. David Griffin was on this broadcast talking about how quickly Yves Missi can process information. He learned from preseason, very clearly learned from preseason, how to position himself, when to go for shot blocks and things like that, how to avoid contact. He did all of that in this game. And now, if he's not going to get in foul trouble, and it's one game, we're overreacting a little bit here. Let's see it in games 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if he passes that test in kind of 10-game chunks, which I think he can do, this is a guy that could probably be a starter sooner rather than later for New Orleans. Not on like every team in the league, but when you're starting Daniel Tice, who was pretty good in this game, I thought. Missi, though, is significantly more of a paradigm shifter for this team. So if he can start, that opens things up. The biggest question about New Orleans from every national media person this summer was, what do they do at the center spot? We got, I don't want to say a definitive answer to that tonight, but we got an answer of, oh yeah, it could be that guy sooner rather than later. This was truly a very impressive performance from the rookie and exactly the type of performance the New Orleans Pelicans needed. I think he could start on game 2. I don't know if they'll actually do that. That's throwing him to the Wolves a little bit, particularly with their next game being at Portland and DeAndre Ayton, the bigger, bruisier center than what the Chicago Bulls have. But he showed some real good flashes, and that's good enough for me right now. And he does look like a future starter with this team. Another guy that looks like a core piece going forward that I want to touch on briefly is Jordan Hawkins. I told you in yesterday's show that he has the green light to shoot whenever he wants, and he did in this game. 3 of 6 from deep, 4 of 9 overall, 7 rebounds from him, 13 points off the bench. He's great. He's going to fit so well with Zion Williamson when Zion's healthy. He was just exciting. Attacking the basket, getting to the line a little bit, and making his shots. Playing pretty good defense, even if he got beat at times, but contributing in other ways on the defensive glass. 7 rebounds, which was really needed for New Orleans. Hawkins is definitely a rotation piece going forward. Missi's the bigger story out of all the young guys, but Hawkins played particularly well in this game, and that was a really encouraging sign. You play defense like that, you rebound like that, you get out in transition and run in the fast break. That's the type of thing that's going to keep you on the floor with head coach Willie Green, and Jordan Hawkins answered that question in the opening game of the regular season. A guy that we had questions about too was Brandon Ingram, but I'm going to tell you, he was great in this game, and I'll tell you what he did, particularly in the third quarter, and why that was so important to this win. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by GameTime. This is my go-to ticketing app now, and it's my go-to ticketing app because of all of the features that GameTime has. And GameTime has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting all the tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They have these curated deals that just make it easier to find the best price on great seats for whatever it is you want. It could be a Pelicans game. It could be live sporting events, but it's also comedy, theater, concerts. And if you're going to a venue you've never been to before, another great feature, seat views before you buy. So you get the exact tickets that you're looking for. And you can toggle all-in pricing, which shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And now for something a little bit different. You want Locked On Pelicans in your inbox? We've got a newsletter now. Introducing Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com. And start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. Here's one thing that I think is going to be fun about this newsletter. This is a way to send a message. Let's go get more people subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans newsletter, then Locked On Lakers, then Locked On Knicks. All of those teams that want to trade for Zion and all of that stuff, they're thinking they can just grab Herb Jones off there. Send them a message that this fan base shows up and matters with the Locked On Pelicans newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. So let's get into Brandon Ingram, because honestly, I thought he was great in this game. It took him a little bit to get into it. In the first half, I thought he was fine. I would have given him a B grade as he was kind of just getting himself into the game. And then in the third quarter, he really got it going. And honestly, this is probably what won the Pelicans the game. While Missi might be the biggest story, the most impressive part because he's a rookie with no expectations, Brandon Ingram probably won the game for New Orleans in the third quarter. This guy who finished on the night with 33 points on 13 of 23 shooting. 33 points on 23 shots is insanely good efficiency. Not something we've always seen from him. He was 3 of 5 from deep. 4 of 4 from the line, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. He was good. He was good in this game. There's no getting around it. But it's what he did in the third quarter that was particularly important. He had 6 points, and that's not necessarily what you think of when you think of an impressive performance from him. It also straddled into the fourth quarter as well, where he had 14 points to close this out. In the second half, the Chicago Bulls went with a zone defense, and it threw New Orleans completely out of rhythm. And all of a sudden, a game that they were leading got much closer than it should have been. The Pelicans were just struggling straight up to score. And then Brandon Ingram got in a rhythm. Now, he first did it by hitting a pull-up three-point attempt, and that's the key here. The goal that they want is 6 to 8, 5, 6, 7, 8 three-point shot attempts per game. He was on 5, so it's the lower end of that. But here's the thing. He did it when they needed him to do it. So he hit that first pull-up 3. And the way you beat a zone defense is by shooting out of it. And then he just did more shooting and got into a rhythm. And then all of a sudden you saw him carving up the Chicago Bulls defense when they realized, oh no, this guy's beating our zone. And then when the court was spaced because of that three-point shooting and he didn't have the ball, you saw him just cut right into the heart of that defense, turn around, get the ball in a post-up, and score. It was that kind of play, a better shot selection, that led this team to a win in the third and fourth quarters from Brandon Ingram. You can look at his shot chart and you can see he's still kind of going to his usual things in this game, and it wasn't ideal at times. And I'm going to sneeze here, so forgive me. And it's throwing me off. And it was really funny when David Griffin was on the broadcast talking about Brandon Ingram and how he needed to change his shot profile. He straight up said that and said that Ingram would be doing that, right? But then Ingram, as he's saying that, immediately goes into a mid-range jumper that I think he got fouled on, but was likely going to miss. And some of those mid-range jumpers weren't great. You look at that in the shot chart, and he still needs to cut out a bunch of those shots. Refine it, but for game 1, this is good. He went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 misses from mid-range compared to just 4 makes, right? So he was 4 for 12 from mid-range. That's not going to get it done there. But it's game 1. We're not going to, roast him for that. He played well, and the way he beat that zone defense for the Chicago Bulls was as key to the Pelicans win as anything else. So I'm super happy about how he played here and what he did, and that was just as important as anything else that happened in this Pelicans game. He was great. There's just no getting around that. He was great. I'm going to say it here. A bunch of y'all think I hate him. I don't. I just want him to play better. He played really well in this game. The defense was there too. And then what you also saw from him, which I thought was really important too, and we'll talk more about in the next segment, was the defensive rebound rebounding. He was aggressive on the defensive glass. 5 defensive boards from him, which is a pretty good number. And not only that, when he grabbed those defensive boards, he was trying to push in transition. You saw him get a board, realize they had a man advantage in the fourth quarter, run down the court, found in that fast break a wide open Jordan Hawkins from 3, kicked it to him. He shoots it, splash, make, and all of a sudden the Pelicans were just going to win this game, and that was going to be that. If he plays like that when he's attacking the basket, trying to get to the rim, doing more things like that, that's how they're going to win. He was a little bit of a passive Brandon Ingram in the first quarter. Maybe that was just him trying to find his rhythm. He had smaller defenders on him. He didn't take advantage. He was settling for those mid-range jumpers. And then in the second half, he just realized he's better than those guys. So when he did have a worse defender on him or a smaller player, he goes, all right, I'm going to cook you here. And he didn't do it with mid-range shots. He did it by going to the rim and doing that good shot profile that we want to see from him. So this was a very good Brandon Ingram game, particularly on opening night. We want to see it with him and Zion coexisting, but the early returns here were very encouraging. That's why I said in the show the other day about Trey Murphy for the everydayers that I don't think it's guaranteed that Brandon Ingram is going to be off of this team or not come back. Maybe it's more likely than not. But overall, if you play like this will fit with Zion, Williamson, some of those mid-rangers gone, and it's going to be a really good performance. He was key in this one. Another guy that I thought was pretty key that took a while to get into this game too was Dejounte Murray. And the stats might not fully reflect it in the shooting and the scoring because he didn't shoot particularly well here. He was 4 of 15, it's 27%, 0 for 3 from deep, but 10 assists, 8 rebounds, 14 points from him. And overall, the starters won their minutes, and we said that is the most important thing that group can do, and they did in this game. Shooting wasn't there, but the way he orchestrated the offense, the pick and rolls to get Yves Missi involved in this game, to Daniel Tice as well, is exactly what you wanted to see. Defensively, he was great. What's also impressive is 10 assists and just 1 turnover as well, taking care of the ball, particularly when at one point the Pelicans were turning the ball over and looked like they were going to be a little bit in danger of throwing this game away. He really settled things down. He settled himself down, and the Pelicans got back in this one. Of the other big names on the team, I loved CJ McCollum, 23 points, second most for New Orleans in this one, 5 of 11 from 3, 45.5%, 5 assists. He was really good. You want that 3-point shooting. He was aggressive when it came to all of that. And that was one of those type of performances that when he's kind of the third or fourth guy, he's going to be really effective. Kick the ball out to him, he will take him. Threes in transition, he will take them. They needed that 3-point shooting, and we'll touch on the magic 40 number coming up here in the next segment of Locked On Pelicans. We're going to look at some of the things we want to look at that we said we're going to be watching all season long. The defensive rebounding. I got the number for you here. The 3-point shooting. And a couple of other key performances that I thought were important in the Pelicans' 123-111 win over the Chicago Bulls. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. This is great because I've been using it while I've been kind of traveling back to Louisiana here. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars awarded in winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And it's super simple. All you do is pick more or less on the stats that they put out there. In game number 2, more or less on Yves Missi scoring 8.5 points. What about more or less on 1.5 blocks for Yves Missi here? And if you sign up today, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football and basketball season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app, use promo code LOCKEDONNBA, and go get $50 instantly after your first $5 play. And you can do that with Prize Picks. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Now, go sign up for the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter. It's going to be in your inbox tomorrow. We're going to be talking probably Yves Missi when I write it right after this. I mean, I would imagine that's kind of the biggest story here, and it was a whole lot of fun and what it means for this team. So go get and sign up for the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter over at LockedOnDaily.com. Let's beat some of those bigger market teams and show them that Pelicans fans are probably more passionate than them. So now, for your second listen, by the way, Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson breaking down everything black and gold. Go make Locked On Saints your second listen today, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So a couple things I want to touch on that we're going to be kind of monitoring all season long that we have concerns about. And first and foremost, that was defensive rebounding. Now, with no Zion Williamson, it meant they could play a traditional center, whether it's Daniel Theis, Yves Missi, more so than normal here. And they definitely did that in a game where maybe they wouldn't. So I don't know if we need to read too much into the defensive rebounding, but look, it was good in this game. They had 35 defensive boards, 9 offensive rebounds for the Chicago Bulls. So an 79 and change defense, let's round up, 80% defensive rebounding rate. That'd lead the league if that number stays that case all year long. Would have led the league last year. They kind of passed that test. You saw them really flying towards the ball. Now, I didn't think that the Chicago Bulls are a particularly strong offensive rebounding team, but they weren't really giving up, just bad offensive boards or anything like that. One or two are going to happen off some misses and things like that. Jalen Smith got it going in that second half with 15 points and 3 offensive boards for him. But overall, they did a good job of keeping the Bulls off of the offensive glass here. If they team rebound like that, everybody kind of chipping in, all of the starters had multiple defense boards. Murray with 8, CJ with 2, Theis 2, you probably want more than that. Ingram with 7, Herb Jones with 4, Missi with 7, Hawkins with 7, Javonte Green, we'll get more to him in a second, with 3. Those are pretty good performances when it comes to team rebounding and really allowed this team not to give up second chance points, easy buckets like that for the Chicago Bulls. The other number that we're watching is 40. That is apparently the magic number from 3 for the New Orleans Pelicans that they want to take. 40, not just 3-point shot attempts, but good 3-point shot attempts. They didn't hit that number in this game, but they were definitely on pace in the first half. They took 37 threes in this one, hitting 14 of them, 37.8%, so 38%. In that first half, I believe they were 9 of 22, so that's above 40% and well on pace for that 40 number. They just didn't need it in the second half as much here, as a dog might be coming over to say hi in a minute. Luna, you going to make an appearance on Locked On Pelicans? Okay, no, you're not. Sorry, I'm back in the studio tomorrow here. So, they were going after it and trying to shoot those threes. And once Brandon Ingram kind of got in that rhythm and started taking them, that's the type of play that's really going to elevate this team and make them a very scary offensive team. And that's going to be exactly what they need to do if they want to be both a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense as well. So I like the number. It's okay they didn't hit 40. 37's close enough, and that's an improvement. Everyone in that starting lineup was trying to take some threes. You even got one from Daniel Theis here. CJ with 11 is great. Ingram with 5, let's bump that up a little bit more, but that's a good number too. Murray needs to take more. His shot, I think, will come around. And at times he was definitely rocky in this one. Herb going 0 for 3 after, kind of a scary injury and having an off shooting night wasn't there, but the defense was good. But Hawkins coming in off the bench. You had Jeremiah Robinson-Earl take 3 of them. Jose took 3. This is also without Trey Murphy too. When Zion comes back, you're going to need those guys to take those threes. I think they'll just be just fine in that regard when it comes to everything here. So they're going to be, I think, good when it comes to 3-point shooting, and the early returns here were really good. Other guy I want to shout out is Javonte Green off the bench being impactful. The most impactful bench player in terms of plus minus, plus 14 off the bench. 9 points scored, 3 of 3, got to the line 4 times, 3 rebounds, 4 steals. he filled the Najee Marshall role. We've been on here talking that you guys were going to like this guy, that he was going to really just fit that role to a T, that everyone was raving about him in training camp and all of that. He definitely did it. I was pretty happy with what we saw from him. One or two things that I was kind of confused about was some of those Jeremiah Robinson-Earl minutes, but those started to go away in the second half a little bit, especially as rookie Yves Missi was playing really well, and so they kind of gave those minutes back to him in the second half of the game. Overall, just a good performance for New Orleans, particularly on the defensive side of the ball in the second half. So a little bit of a tease of what we're going to talk about in tomorrow's show here. The defense struggled in the first half, particularly when it came to allowing points in the paint. But they settled down in the second half, and Missi was a part of it, and so was everyone, including CJ McCollum on the perimeter too. They were getting steals. They were getting out and running. I want to look at all of those. 29 fast break points for New Orleans. 30 points off turnovers here. That is a recipe for really good success for the Pelicans. We'll look at all of that in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans and get you set for the weekend as well. So don't forget, subscribe to the Locked On Daily newsletter from Locked On Pelicans. I said that poorly. Over at LockedOnDaily.com. It'll be in your inbox Monday through Friday. It's going to be a lot of fun. I've enjoyed doing it so far, so please go subscribe. Send a message to all those big market teams. We'll be back tomorrow with more on the defense. 1-0 for the Pelicans so far this season. Looking forward to the rest of the games. They've got a 4-game road trip coming up with all winnable games. We're going to be previewing, recapping everything right here on Locked On Pelicans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.